Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to being NDC. I hope you had a great time so far, and it's the second day. And thank you for coming and joining me for the talk. My name is Teresa Wu. I work as a software engineer for JP Morgan. And in addition, I'm also a public speaker. I'm a Google expert for the front-end cross-platform framework called Flutter, which uses Start as its language. And I'm a big fan of using front-end, cross-platform front-end technology to build applications. And my talk today will be mainly focused on front-end technology, and I'm going to give a deep dive of how we build the Chase application and its architecture. So before we start, just to have like a bit understanding of my audience today, how many of you here are front-end engineers? Awesome. Okay, more than half, at least from what I can see. And have you ever heard or used the Chase app? It's a mobile application. Okay, great. So yeah, the Chase mobile application was first launched in the U.S. It was one of the biggest banking for in the U.S. And about 2 years ago, we launched the same application in the UK, but it's digital only. That means we run zero branch in the UK. It's everything digital. So building these front-end projects is really interesting, and I will talk to you about how we create the architecture to enable us to scale. So if you imagine this is a big team, a massive project, and we started from building it with really fun innovations, and towards the end, we do have our difficulties, and I will talk you through how we create a micro frontend to enhance. We can continue our journey, and this application can then scale. So let's begin. Right. Before we go into very tech detail of the project itself, I'm going to just quickly do some talk about some theory, right? In case you never heard of micro frontend, but I'm sure you heard the terms of microservices. So micro frontend is very similar, and in terms of the theory, it's very similar to microservices. It's basically divide your project from monolith to something smaller, like something you can easily manageable, and you can chunk into smaller pieces in a front-end project. And it's probably harder in the front-end project, especially when it comes to mobile, because when we build a project for mobile, for example, in the end of the day, we still have to release it as a monolith project. But there are lots of ways we can actually enhance this journey. So micro frontend, what it means is we actually slice the whole project into modules or packages. I'm sure if you are front-end engineers, your project, as for today, might not be a monolith project anymore. You might have different modules, different packages in a project. This is how we start with our Chase application as well. But in the end, we do find other difficulties like couple dependencies, and we think about our versioning solutions, but we shall talk about those a bit more later on. So micro frontend is slice the project into smaller packages, and so each of the modules is interchangeable, like you can use them as a Lego-like package, like a library. And this allows us to decouple release from development. That means by end of this project, we want to enable that we can release on demand, and we can also roll back versions as well. So why do we need to build our project in a micro frontend style, right? So first, it enables us to have the cross-function team to give end-to-end responsibility for a feature. And the team have decisions of when to release what feature. And they also have their own decision for the tech stack of their packages and their modules. And in this way, it's more effective because you have smaller code base to work with. And it will be more efficient because it will be easier to upgrade and to maintain and be optimized for feature development. I've been told I need to click it in a certain angle. Right. A little bit introduction of the Chase UK app. So Chase UK app is actually different from Chase US app, even though we are all under the Chase family. The Chase UK app is actually pure digital. We have no branch. And it was a greenfield project, which was quite amazing because for a company like a big investment bank to start a project totally from scratch using the latest technology was kind of a deal. So the Chase UK app is a greenfield project, and we built them from scratch. It was launched in the UK in 2021. And it was hit like very successful. It went to almost like a 1 million downloading and have 1 million customers just within a year. And the number is still growing. And we think we hit #1 downloading in both of the App Store. And it was built with React Native. So it's a cross-platform. So how is a project look like from like a very high-level overview? So most of the features, like for example, I think over 80% of the features in the project is built with React Native. That means we have TypeScript underneath, right? And for most of the features like onboarding, payment, inside account, cards, those features and some of the shared packages are built with React Native. And this is a part we actually heavily worked on since last year to re-architecture ways. We applied micro front-end ways. And on top of the React Native framework, we have the native framework. And sometimes we use a bridge to connect native and React Native. And those Android and iOS sitting on top. We have our native application code for things we couldn't really do much with React Native. First is because we are the bank. We are being monitored under lots of regulations, and it's for many reasons, like for security and for example, the networking logins, right, and authentications are done in native. And we use the modular structure, and we have feature package and share package, right? So this is like from a project architecture from a high-level view of our application. Great. So after we've been following this architecture for over like a year, building the project, having a feature in, and starting to make releases, everything is fine at the point. We have a team from back-end engineer, cloud, QA, front-end team, over like people full of like a floor, right? A certain number. Everyone's happy until the point we found, okay, we hit some challenges. And we do have a modular approach project, and we have mono repo. So that means all our front-end code underneath one repo. And we do have multiple packages, right? But underneath of those modules, we have circle dependencies. So what happens is like one day we happily coding our functions, and one engineer decided to draw this big graph tree of our project. This is not a picture of our project, but very close, right? We end up having this diagram showing in front of us like, okay, hold on, this is not something we want to see. So having dependencies is actually fine, which I will explain why later. But as long as all your dependencies pointing to one direction, either up or down, depends on how your project is depending on each other. But having those arrows up, pointing both directions, that means your project is definitely have the same potential of circle dependencies. And having circle dependencies would definitely break your way, your journey to have your project in a micro front-end style. So we did a lot of work here to break it, and that will be explained as well. And having those circle dependencies means even though our project is modular approach, everything's split, but what happens in the end is if one team or one feature had error, this error will still impact the whole project because this error in this module will impact another module. And in this way, we seeing delayed in our release process, and we have then delayed our release train as well. So we decide to deep dive in this problem and find a way to solve it. So here is our solutions, and in this presentation, I'm going to walk you through those steps a bit more in detail one by one. So we started with give analysis of the project and did some POC and did lots of workshop to understand what is the actual problem. Believe me, to see that last point of having circle dependency and understand what we need to solve, it took us actually a few of good workshop to come to that conclusion. So we analyzed the project and the architecture of it, and we did lots of spec, and then we select the tools that we can use. So, and we actually spent a lot of time and effort to break cycle dependencies. And in the end, so everything we do is to enable every engineer to build the project in a more efficient and more effective way. But this all contribute to the end goal that we can release in a very modern format, release easily. And in the end, grab everything we do, we redesigned our release process. So first of all, the architecture. So we are saying our project has React Native underneath. Most of them is React Native. And on top, it has Android and iOS native code. But if we take a closer look of the actual module architecture, we actually follow the principle of feature-driven development, which is a bit different from DDD, but similar-ish. So we actually, our micro front-end design is quite similar, actually almost the same. It's a mirror of our backend service. So we don't actually recreate or regenerate another type of layer or architecture away from our backend service. We actually try to mirror it to make sure both teams can speak the same language and we can understand each other. And this is also how we structure the team as well. So if on the backend side, we have services like onboarding, account, then we have the mirroring modules in the front end. So we have more than those modules, but this is like a bit closer look of that, what the project looks like. So we have some feature modules, which are on the top of the tree, which is like a node. Those are like the service, like onboarding, account, service, cards. And in the center, you see like lots of smaller pieces. Those are the shared package. And they are, for example, authentication, design system, IATing, feature flag, and a bit more. And those shared packages are again shared among those modules. And you can create rules of what it means for your project to be shared or to be an independent node. So far, so good, right? We are happy with this structure, and it's probably common for most of the front-end project. But we do find that one issue here is navigation. So navigation in a front-end project at this point for us isn't done in a very clean way. Why? Because if you think about navigation, it actually goes everywhere. So one solution is you have navigation, your routing system, at the enter point when you go to the application at main. So when you enter the app, you grab the routing system, you grab this logic, and you apply it everywhere. So that means every time when you want to use navigation, you grab it from the root. That means all your modules will have this dependency of the root package, which is probably the main application. This might look like a clean way, but every time we update the root, think about the packages might be impacted with. So it might look clean, but it doesn't help us with dependencies. So another solution is that we can actually group navigation and summarize what we've done in the main, but we put in a share module. So it actually went down a bit lower to the closer to the domain level, but it's still, the problem hasn't been solved as well. That means if you have navigation as a package, as a module, every time when someone add or rename, delete, or modify a routing system, like how we navigate from screen A to screen B, This change will again impact everyone else who has dependency to it. So is there a better way to solve this navigation? There probably are, and there'll probably be someone who is smarter, like solving this issue, or maybe put this system on the cloud so you can grab it when you need it, right? So what we've done is we have a combination of things. So if we want to navigate externally from one module to a different module, for example, if we want to jump from payment to my profile, this external connection was stored in navigation package in a shared package. So this is called shared package or shared navigation. But anything you do locally within your own package, so everything that you navigate within your onboarding service or payment service, this navigation is actually stored and held within this feature module itself. So some of the code follow this way. The project is cleaner, but the downside of it is we do see more code duplication, which is fine. So it's okay to have your code duplicated for the reason of solving circle dependencies. Depends on how much you have to copy your code. So we actually decided this is architecture we're going to follow. We have our first solution of navigation, and to rewrite this navigation system took us some time as well. But after we applied it, run the graph again, we do see the map. It's getting cleaner, which is great. So another thing we did, a very big discussion as well, in a project architecture level, is the version. So imagine that you have a big project with multiple packages within it. How do you version each package? How do you version each module? If we didn't come up with a very smart solution, later on when we actually release those modules, we might hit a pain point. So we decided not to be super creative, but to be safe. So we use a sandwich system, which means you have the major, minor, and the patch. So each of the breaking point release will become a major release. And each feature update or a new feature being added will be a minor. And again, I will talk about how we handle version system in a very auto way, that we don't do this manually anymore. And each patch will be, each small change that anyone can use will be a patch. So in our project, we care about major, and we watch out for minor, but we ignore patch that anyone can update patch anytime, and we accept changes from patch automatically. Sorry for my bullet points. It says 1. It should be with number, but you guys can work this out. And we look at our Git strategy as well. So how many of you here think you are using trunk a strategy? Okay, great. It's actually nice to use trunk, but the thing is, for myself, right, my own experience, this is not something I do. I talk as for Chase. Don't quote me on this. But whenever I work on a new project, I hear people telling me they are using trunk base. I look twice, because having a main branch and always commit to the main branch doesn't actually mean you are using trunk-based development. Trunk-based development actually means every time you commit, you are confident the code is ready to release. That means you have to do lots of testing, lots of code check before you commit. So we were using trunk initially, but anyway, we actually changed to use Git flow. This is due to the mobile application nature that we still have to release through the release cycle of the app store. So having a Git flow actually works for us in a way that we have a main branch. And we actually kind of in between right now, actually. Sorry. We are using the, what was the name for it? There's another strategy in between trunk and the Git flow, and I can't remember. Sorry. So we don't have develop branch and the main branch. So we have a main branch, but and the main branch we actually feature out branch out our feature branch, and we also have a release branch as well. I think it's called enhanced trunk development or something, right? So when you actually look at your module versioning, you need to think about what Git strategy you're using as well. So your Git strategy might have impact on your version system. So right now we are using something in between. And then we treat every merge as a commit to publish, and each publish will occur a version bump of each package. And this was done in an automatic way. And once someone commit their code, they actually opt in for their code to be published as a module, as a new version of that module, and to artifacts. That means another team can use their published module as a library. And also we applied testing strategy to support backwards compatibility as well. Actually, I've been working on this for the past 2-3 weeks for this testing strategy. So in our micro front-end architecture, we almost like towards the end, we realize we do have some singleton package. That means every time when someone publish a new version of those singleton package, our application speeds slower to react to those singleton package because of the global instance. So we worked on a system that can detect those changes be early in time to support backward compatibility. Right, so that's the project level, how we architecture projects in a modular way, thinking about navigation and the version system as well. What was the time? Okay, right, then we're starting to implement solutions that actually enable us to decouple the project, to bump the version, and to cache as well, which is very important. So those are a few tools we used. We were using Yarn before, and we switched to PNPM. Also, we took out the Learner, and we used Webpack because because we use React Native, right? So for people who are familiar with React Native, underneath the hood, Metro is the bundler. But in the beginning, when we actually work on the project, Metro doesn't really support Symlink. But right now, there's a plugin you can use with Metro that does support Symlink now. So Webpack supports Symlink and code splitting naturally. And PNPM allow you to, basically, if you use Yarn, which is great, how it manages the dependencies is a bit different from PNPM, because we want to go with micro front-end style. So we want to force each module to have its own ecosystem. That means every module should have its own dependencies in their package JSON. So we switched to use PNPM. And change set was the tool I was mentioning a bit early. When we do the version system, to bump version, to pack each version, like, for example, minor or major. And also, if I bump the version of this module, which was used in a different package, I don't want to manually check if this was impacted, right? So having this tool called change set will be the one that actually can manage those versions for you. And we also use Turbo Repo, which again is a great tool that you can use Turbo Repo to, first, it prevents cycle dependencies for you, and it does caching as well. Right, so after the implementation of those tools, this was something we done in parallel, because you have to solve your circle dependency in order to use the full power of PNPM and the Turbo. So basically, if your project has circle dependency, you won't be able to use Turbo Repo at all. And once you have Turbo Repo in, anyone who submits a pull request that creates circle dependency, Turbo will actually break. so which was actually very smart. So we actually did a circle dependency in parallel with implementing those tools. So in your project, right, we definitely should avoid having circle dependency, and we should use package management as well. And sometimes we actually can use, so when we start learning programming, right, probably the first thing we heard from school is that do not repeat yourself. But for the purpose of having your project in the micro front-end style, sometimes you do have to duplicate your code to reduce circle dependency, also to improve efficiency as well. And right, so maybe we can talk about a bit more here of how we break dependencies, which is a lot of work again. So imagine you have some shared modules, right? Those can be shared payments, shared onboarding, shared accounts that has the common code you need to supply to support your node, your top level node modules. But having them changed means you will have to change your top level package as well. So in this way, if you want to avoid have circle dependency, it means, for example, your module A have dependency of module B, and the module B have dependency of module C. Then in a way, A and C is also connected. So those three have circle dependency, right? So what we can do is we can take the one of the module, for example, C. We can break C into two modules. This could be one of the way to solve your circle dependency. That means B can depend on C, and A can depend on C independently. So C will be split into two. Or, as what I'm saying is, we actually delete module C if C is actually quite small. So instead of having a module as module C, we have C as code duplicated in module A and module B. So it depends on the functions and your code design. And so you have to decide this with your team, see what is the best option for you. And we can split the module or even remove them by having them duplicated in each module, or we can even merge a module. So circle dependency happens when, so for example, in our project, we have over 70 packages, and we actually used all three functions. So we also merged some module as well from 3 to 1. So this is how we solved our circle dependency. Right, and as what I'm saying is right, so the first part of this presentation is about how we design the project, how we build it, and how we solve the versioning, and how we actually make sure that we can build in a micro front-end style. But this allows each team to work more independently, happily, but in the end, what we want to achieve is to release the module in a micro front-end style. Because what's the big advantage that we have to split the module if we can't release them? So the other part of this talk will focus now on the pipeline design and release management. Right. So if you worked in a front-end project, or more specifically, mobile application, you probably experienced this, the pain of release. So for us, we run sprint, and every 2 weeks, we cut the release branch. And this build will go into having been tested end-to-end, manual accessibility. And once bugs are detected, the application will be put on the hold before we can release it to production. And one team will have to solve this issue. That means this team went well, this team solving the issue, every other team will have to be on hold. So basically, we couldn't release the project. Everything is being kind of delayed. So one bug will delay the delivery of the project across the entire department. So the goal of our new release process is we want to enable in a way that each module can be deployed independently, and we can release on demand without restrictions or dependencies. And we want to avoid having breaking changes in production. And we want to separate our CI/CD from, so if without having micro front-end way of release, we'll have integration pipeline, and we'll have this deployment pipeline. And with this new approach, we have a secondary pipeline in between, which allows us to publish a module and version it. So this is our publish and release pipeline. So we have a third pipeline now to supporting it. So again, so the one that you see in the pink area is the project design and the build within our development software engineering team. We look after the project in a front-end way, the module dependency, the version system. But having this project to be released in a micro front-end style, this was actually involved of the effort of many other teams as well. So when we did our approach, we actually did lots of workshop with other teams in the same project, right? So we, in a pink zone, we will be the engineers to build the features, and we will decide which module we want to release. The team will have the power to decide when to release the features, right? And the engineer who are in the core platform team, the CI/CD pipeline team, will be the one to integrate, to actually write the script, to deliver these functions, to deploy as well. So they will be the supporting of this operation, right? And then when we talk about release, we have the release management team as well. So we work with them to discuss our new solutions and what we should do, to have advice from them of saying, now we're changing the release process a bit. So instead of grabbing the code from the workspace, like every time when you commit to the Git, at the time we release, we actually cut the project and we grab the code from the last commit, which was not tested heavily. And this will be a change. Now is we're going to grab the code, which was tested thoroughly, versioned, and published. So in the end, our release of the app will contain modules, which is tested earlier. So we shift test to the left. So again, that means we have to work with testing engineering team as well. So they will decide for us like when and what should be tested for each module to be published. We also changed some of our testing functions as well. So this was actually a very big project in the end. So we have contribution from testing, from the pipeline, from release, and from the front-end team to put together this micro front-end project. So if you have a look of the release process, having a monolith project and release it as a big, massive application, that means we can release at the end of each sprint. We might have a long-lived release branch, and we might actually miss this release train or having this train being irregular. Follow the micro front-end style. We actually decouple release from development. That means we're testing be early, and we shift test to left. And we might not need release branch anymore because in the end of the day, and when we release the project, we grab all the released version of each package and each module and bundle them into a big application and release it. So here are the design of the pipeline. I followed the strategy from Google, but this is what they also recommend as well. So 3 pipeline. So first is integration. The recommended running time for integration, that means this pipeline will be triggered when someone creates a pull request. The recommended time to run this pipeline is around 10 minutes, which is a bit difficult for front-end project because of the testing. And this should be quite fast for faster feedback and to show the failures and tests fail as well. So once you run your integration pipeline and everything is successful, the engineer should be able to merge their pull request to the main branch. And delivery is what we also internally we call this publish pipeline. We run this pipeline to publish our module, to version it, and to put this package in artifacts for other teams to consume as a library. So this one should be quite close to your releasable code, to production ready. So this pipeline should run a bit longer and have a bit more tests that you run underneath this pipeline. For example, right, this again depends on your team. At PR level, you want to run full tests for unit tests and maybe some of the snapshot as well. At publish level, you probably want to including more of, like, for example, detox tests, a little bit end-to-end, not a full set of end-to-end, and having also a number of the threshold of how many tests coverage you want to have as well for this pipeline. We also have this rule of code owner. That means if you are the code owner of this team, then you have to at least do a check or do a quick check of the code being released. So in the end, after we've done the first two, so in the end, we're actually having a very smoothly, easier-ish deployment pipeline, which is to grab the code, package the code, and then deploy it to the App Store. And this pipeline should be protected in a way because it has protected in the way that it should have limited access, right? Because you have more requirements for authentication at this pipeline. So let's take a bit closer look of the center, the published pipeline, which is, again, when we look at this purely, it doesn't have lots of, it's not really mystery. It's just the only thing that is different from this one to the integration or to the actual deployment is the tests we run and the decision we took to make this pipeline to fail. That means this build isn't successful. And what we should do if this pipeline is unsuccessful. So as usual, we grab the code, we perform the check, and we have some rules of what this pipeline should be successful for. It should have, for example, 80% of test coverage. It should have a full unit test passing rate. And in the end, if it fails, it goes back to the product team who is opt-in to publish their feature. And once we run the tests and we're happy with the test result, then we run the script of the changes set to version this package to bump version as well. And at the same time, this code commit will contain the version bump for other module as well. So if I have a module A, I bump the module A to version 1.3, right? That means whoever uses this module A will have their package.json changed from version 1.2 to 1.3. And this is the whole process of our publish pipeline. Right. So up to now, after the work over a year in a team, we managed to actually get very, very close to our goal, to have this new release process. That means when at the team level, each team, they build a feature. The team decide that they opt in of when they want to release the feature. That means they can trigger the pipeline to publish it, right? And the pipeline will be triggered and bump the version, build, and publish to artifacts. And in artifacts, the new version is published. It can be consumed as a library. And in the end of the day, all this process will contribute and accelerate the app release as well. So as a summary, the results, what we achieve is we still using React Native. Before, after, the framework is the same. We were using Metro, And we use in Metro as well because now Metro has support for Symlink. But in the end, we also had the Metro running in parallel with Webpack. And in terms of the package, we used Yarn and the learner. Now we use, sorry, that was also a mistake. I apologize for that. So after we use PNPM as a replacement, and we also added changes set as to manage the version system. So how do we how can we success micro frontend, right? So this is a process, right? It's not one-off task. It took us actually very long to design and implement micro frontend in our application. And it requires a team collaboration, right? We formed a small team to do this task independently and worked with many other teams as well to come up with this solution. And yeah, we designed the project. We make sure there's a zero circle dependency. And we started from one module, which is a core module, and then slowly moving on to each feature module. And we have also decoupled our tests. So you have unit tests, integration, and end-to-end. And in the end, we also have built the pipeline to support and ship the micro bundle as well. So thank you. This is my talk.